This briefing is about where Prince George's County stands on data centers, what the current legislation does and does not do, and what I recommend as a better framework for protecting residents while still allowing appropriate technology development. The short version is this: data centers are not all the same. A small server room supporting a hospital, school, public safety agency, or local business is very different from a hyperscale power campus that may require major electric, water, backup generation, and public infrastructure commitments. My recommendation is not no technology. My recommendation is rules first. Prince George's County should welcome appropriate, low-impact, local-serving compute facilities, but it should not give the data center industry a blank check. Before permits resume, the county needs clear siting rules, public review, enforceable performance standards, utility cost protections, transparency, and accountability. The history matters because the current Slide 2. The history matters because the current controversy did not begin in 2026. The county first moved toward data centers as an economic development strategy. In 2020, the county adopted a tax incentive aimed at attracting data centers. Then, in 2021, CB 1-2021 added qualified data centers as permitted uses and exempted them from conceptual site plan and detailed site plan review. That was a major policy choice. It made data centers easier and faster to approve. The problem is that the county moved quickly to encourage the industry before it had a complete framework for impacts, public review, infrastructure costs, environmental protection, or community safeguards. By 2024 and 2025, public concern increased. There were disputes over rural and agricultural siting, concerns about hyperscale facilities, and a shift toward more scrutiny. The county then established the Data Center Task Force, which recommended broader controls, including special exception review and sustainable operations plans. The lesson from this history is that the original framework was too permissive. The 2026 question is whether the council will simply patch that framework or replace it with enforceable standards. LDR 16-2026 is important, but we need to be precise about what it does. Its main purpose is to repeal the exemption from detailed site plan review for qualified data centers. That means data center projects would no longer be able to bypass that level of planning review. The public would get more opportunity to see the project, comment, and participate in a planning board hearing. There could also be district council review or appeal after planning board action. That is an improvement. We should not dismiss it. But LDR 16 does not change where data centers are allowed. It does not require special exception review. It does not define size limits. It does not distinguish between a small local facility and a hyperscale campus. It does not create performance standards for energy demand, water use, noise, generators, air emissions, cost shifting, or cumulative impacts. So the TCA takeaway is support LDR 16 as an interim floor, but do not treat it as the answer. The county needs comprehensive legislation before new permits move forward. Detailed site plan review is mainly about site design. It looks at things like where buildings go, how parking and access work, landscaping, grading, and other on-site features. Those things matter, but they do not answer the bigger question: should this use be allowed in this place at this scale? That is why this issue cannot be solved with site plan review alone. Residents are concerned about land use compatibility, electric grid demand, water and sewer capacity, diesel backup generators, noise, air quality, thermal impacts, stormwater, cumulative impacts, and who pays for infrastructure upgrades. Those are not minor design details. Those are policy questions. For TCA, the message should be clear. LDR 16 gives the public more process, but the county still needs rules that determine where data centers belong, what standards they must meet, and how they are monitored after approval. This is the core of my recommendation. Prince George's County can be pro-technology and pro-jobs, but only under a rules-first framework. First, the county should prefer low-impact compute facilities. That means edge facilities, distributed compute, institutional facilities, public safety compute, hospital and university compute, local serving telecom facilities, and facilities that fit existing infrastructure. Second, the county should constrain high-impact uses. Larger data centers should not be allowed by right. They should go through special exception review, be limited to appropriate industrial or redevelopment locations, and face heightened scrutiny. Third, the county must prevent cost shifting. If a data center creates a need for electric upgrades, substations, water or wastewater upgrades, road changes, emergency services, environmental monitoring, or other public costs, the project should pay for those burdens. Residents, small businesses, and taxpayers should not subsidize private large load facilities. Fourth, performance standards must be enforceable. Conditions are not enough if there is no ongoing monitoring. The county should require operating certificates, public reporting, corrective action, penalties, and renewal review. That is the difference between symbolic review and actual control. The draft bill uses a tiered system, which is one of its strongest features. The reason for tiers is simple. Not all data centers have the same impact. A small facility under 1 megawatt should not be regulated the same way as a 100 megawatt hyperscale campus. Tier 0 and Tier 1 cover accessory server rooms, edge facilities, micro facilities, and small enterprise uses. These are generally preferred if they stay low impact. Tier 2 covers institutional or local serving facilities between 1 and 5 megawatts. These could be appropriate on a hospital, university, public safety, telecommunications, or government campus. Tier 3 covers regional enterprise or co-location facilities between 5 and 20 megawatts. These would require special exception and detailed site plan review. Tier 4 covers large load facilities between 20 and 100 megawatts, or facilities that require major infrastructure upgrades. Tier 5 covers hyperscale facilities, including projects of 100 megawatts or more, transmission-level service, more than one dedicated substation, very large square footage, or regionally significant impacts. The anti-evasion rule is also important. A developer should not be able to split a project into phases, lots, meters, or shell companies to avoid higher review. This slide addresses where larger facilities should and should not go. The draft bill would prohibit or strongly disfavor Tier 3, Tier 4, and Tier 5 facilities in residential, rural, agricultural, neighborhood commercial, local commercial, transit activity center, town activity center, and mixed-use zones. That is the right approach. A hyperscale data center is not simply an office building. It is an industrial-scale utility and infrastructure use. It can include large buildings, substations, transformers, cooling equipment, generator yards, fuel storage, battery systems, fencing, security, lighting, and continuous operations. The draft allows larger facilities only through strict pathways, such as industrial zones or a data center opportunity overlay. But the overlay would not create by right approval. That is essential. An overlay should guide projects to more suitable redevelopment sites, not become a loophole. For the largest projects, the applicant should have to explain why this site, why Prince George's County, why this scale, and why a smaller or less impactful alternative would not work. This is one of the most important slides for residents. A data center's biggest impacts may not be visible from the road. The real impact may be on the electric system, water system, wastewater system, roads, emergency services, and future public infrastructure capacity. The principle should be simple. A project should pay for the load and public burdens it creates. The draft bill would require an energy infrastructure and cost responsibility plan. That plan would disclose demand by phase, utility feasibility, substations, grid upgrades, energy sourcing, load flexibility, and infrastructure needs. For Tier 4 and Tier 5 facilities, the applicant would also have to provide a public-facing residential ratepayer impact statement. That is critical because residents need to know whether project-related costs could show up in electric rates, water rates, transmission charges, public debt, taxes, or future utility rate cases. The district council should not approve a major data center unless it can make a no-cost shift finding. In plain English, the county should be able to say, "This project will not make residents, small businesses, or taxpayers pay for private infrastructure burdens." Residents often ask, how close could this be to homes? How loud will it be? How often will generators run? How much water will it use? What happens during drought? What about battery fires? What about lighting and visual impacts? The draft bill answers those concerns with enforceable standards. For larger facilities, it includes general setbacks and sensitive receptor setbacks. Sensitive receptors include homes, schools, childcare facilities, parks, places of worship, senior housing, healthcare facilities, trails, conservation lands, streams, wetlands, and other vulnerable uses or resources. It limits generators to emergency backup by default and restricts routine testing. It requires stronger emissions controls, including Tier 4 diesel generator standards where applicable. It requires water capacity proof, drought plans, and closed-loop or lower water cooling. It also limits use of groundwater or surface water withdrawals for cooling where public water is available. It requires predictive noise studies, monitoring, lighting controls, screening, and corrective action. It also requires battery energy storage systems to comply with fire and emergency response standards, including fire/EMS review and first responder training. The point is that standards should not be vague promises. They should be measurable, monitored, and enforceable. This slide is about public accountability. The county should not approve large data centers based on incomplete information, private assurances, or confidential side agreements. The draft requires public project websites, a county public information clearinghouse, public filings, technical studies, public comment periods, applicant responses to substantive comments, and a prohibition on broad non-disclosure agreements. That is important because residents cannot meaningfully participate if the key facts are hidden. Project scope, location, ownership, megawatts, water demand, generator inventory, public costs, incentives, environmental impacts, community impacts, and mitigation commitments should be public. The draft also requires annual operating certificates for Tier 3, Tier 4, and Tier 5 facilities. This is a key enforcement tool. Approval should not be a one-time event. The facility should have to show every year that it is complying with conditions, reporting requirements, community benefits, financial assurance, and corrective actions. Community benefits also need to be handled carefully. Required mitigation should address the project's actual impacts. Supplemental community benefits can go beyond mitigation, but they should be transparent, enforceable, and developed through legitimate community representation, not handpicked by the applicant. There is no known data center proposal in Tantalon, but that does not mean TCA should ignore the issue. The county is setting countywide rules now. Once the rules are adopted, they will affect future projects, including potential projects in South County, rural communities, redevelopment areas, and other sites that may not be on the public radar yet. TCA's policy stance should be practical. Support CB 019 or LDR 16 only as a first step. Ask the council to integrate comprehensive controls. Do not reopen the permit pipeline without rules for siting, utility impacts, performance standards, transparency, enforcement, and cost protection. TCA should watch for any proposal in South County or near rural communities, any effort to approve data centers by right or through weak review, any request for county incentives without a fiscal analysis, and any rushed process or incomplete utility disclosure. The message is, technology can be welcome, but not at the expense of residents, ratepayers, and future land use choices. The recommendation is that the County Council adopt CB 019 only as an interim step. Then replace the current permissive framework with comprehensive data center controls before new permits proceed. The 6 essential asks are: first, require special exception review for Tier 3, Tier 4, and Tier 5 facilities. Second, require industrial appropriate siting and prohibit rural residential hyperscale uses. Third, protect residents, small businesses, and taxpayers from electric, water, infrastructure, emergency service, and public cost shifting. Fourth, adopt real performance standards for setbacks, noise, lighting, generators, cooling, water, air quality, battery storage, and fire safety. Fifth, require public transparency, including a clearinghouse, strong notice, comment periods, applicant responses, public disclosures, and no broad non-disclosure agreements. Sixth, require operating certificates, quarterly reporting, penalties, corrective action, and community benefit enforcement. The closing message to Council should be: set the rules before the industry sets the precedent.